Hey guys, it's Eamon. First day of the World Blitz Championship just finished up in New York. And I want to take a look at my favorite game of the day. This was from round seven between Alireza Firouzja and Fabiano Caruana. Let's take a look. Alireza opens with e4, and we get a pretty normal open Sicilian here. d4, the knights come out, and now e5. So this is the Sveshnikov variation. Hitting the knight has to move, and the knight can move to several squares here. It could go back to f3, could come to f5, could come to b3, but there's really only one way to play for an advantage, and that is by bringing the knight to b5, threatening to come into d6, so therefore Fabi plays d6, stopping that. And now the knight comes to d5, and one of the knights is threatening to come to f7, so therefore this knight on d5 has to be taken. He takes, and this position has been reached many times. It's a theoretical position, but it was actually reached in four games in the World Chess Championship match between Magnus Carlsen and Fabiano Caruana in 2018. And in all four of those games, Fabiano was actually on the white side, Magnus on the black. And all four of those games were drawn, but they were very tense and interesting battles. And no doubt Fabi would be well booked up in this line. You know, when you play a world championship match and you do theoretical preparation on a line, you're basically going to be one of the foremost theoreticians in that position. So knight b8 was played. Knight b8 was played by Carlsen in two of the games against Fabiano. He also played knight e7 in two games. So both moves are fine. And now this move, queen f3. So this is a very aggressive variation, also a bit risky. The queen is looking to come to either c3 or a3 and try to pressure the queenside squares for black. b6, a6, kicking the knight back. And if the knight does go back, then black is not going to have any problems developing his pieces. So therefore, the queen comes to a3, pinning this a-pawn. So of course, at the moment, the a-pawn can't take the knight without losing the rook in the corner. So Fabi just completes his development. He plays bishop e7, and he's ready to castle in the next move. Now here is where Firouzja mixed up his lines. Firouzja no doubt would have been well familiar with this position, but when he was blitzing, he mixed up his lines and he played bishop d2. The main move here is bishop to g5. And the point is that this bishop can't be taken because after knight takes d6, white is winning. So after bishop g5, this would induce black to play f6. And then the bishop would drop back to d2. And we're going to see later on why it would have been very useful for white to induce this f6 move. Instead, Firouzja forgot about this bishop g5 move and played his bishop to d2. And he clearly wants to play the bishop out to b4 to pressure d6. Now castles, and Firouzja continues with his plan of playing the bishop to b4. But this is a big mistake. He should have just played bishop e2 and tried to castle later. But psychologically, it's very difficult to play bishop e2 here because the whole point of playing the bishop to e2 is, of course, to play the bishop to b4. And if you don't play the bishop to d4, then you're somehow admitting that things haven't gone to plan. So let's see how Fabi takes advantage of this. Now that Fabi's king is out of the middle, he is actually ready to take this knight. So Firouzja takes the rook in the corner, but now knight a6. And we're going to see there's going to be lots of themes of trying to trap this queen here in the corner. Bishop is also hit, so the bishop has to retreat. And now Fabi plays a great move, very typical in this Sveshnikov. This is a classic maneuver. Bishop g5, trying to trade off those dark square bishops. When black has the pawns on dark squares like this, that means his dark square bishop is his bad bishop, and he wants to try to trade it off. And now we see why it would have been so useful in that earlier line for Firouzja to induce this move f6, because this bishop g5 maneuver would not be possible. And now Firouzja takes the bishop, and after this, he really has no hope. He could have tried castling. This just loses immediately because of exchanging and then playing queen b6, and the black queen cuts off the white's queen's only escape square, and all black has to do to win the white queen is develop his bishop somewhere, and white queen will be lost. So therefore, Firouzja's only try, instead of taking the bishop, was to play queen a7 and to try to bring the queen back into the game. But Fabi would have still had a nice attack here by simply trading, removing white's castling rights, and then either playing bishop f5 or knight c5. And black definitely has good compensation and a nice initiative here. Instead, the bishops were exchanged, and Fabi has excellent compensation for the exchange here. Now Firouzja tries queen a7, trying to bring his queen back. And now Fabiano, all he has to do is conduct his attack. And I really like the way he attacks here. An important principle when you're attacking is to always gain time with your moves. And the way to do that is to create a threat with every move. And we're going to see Fabi creates a threat with every single one of his moves now. First of all, knight b4 threatens a fork on c2. So the king has to come to d1. There's no other way to defend that. If bishop d3, then you can just exchange and take on g2, and black is much better here. So therefore, king d1. Now Fabi gives a check. This is very precise. He induces the pawn to come up to f3, significantly weakening this e3 square. Now white will never be able to challenge black's queen on this square. The bishop comes back to f5, creating another threat. So c3, the knight hops in, hitting the rook. Rook comes over. Now nice maneuver, check. The king comes up, and the knight comes back to c4. So this creates two threats. First of all, of course, threatens queen d2 checkmate, and he's simply attacking the rook. So only way to deal with both those threats is rook d1. But now bishop c2 creates another threat against the rook. And Firouzja tries to give back some material by bringing his queen back to f2. And he would love it if Fabi would give up one of his strong attackers in this light square bishop. But of course, Fabi's not going to get distracted by a simple rook. He has his eyes on the king stranded in the middle. And he plays e4. Just trying to crack open the center and get at that king as quickly as possible. Now Firouzja tries rook d4. Taking this pawn would be a disaster after rook e8, and now black's last piece is invited to the party, and he's going to get mated very quickly. So that's why Firouzja played rook d4. And now Fabi finishes up the game with bishop d3 check. Firouzja gives back the exchange, but it's too little too late. Now a very nice move to completely entomb the king, queen c1, taking away the king's only retreat square here on c2. And the king has no way back. Firouzja tries b3, but now knight b2 check, and from here, it's just forced mate. White could give up his queen, but instead Firouzja stepped forward, and now it's mate in 2. f5 check, king comes to d4, and queen f4 is checkmate. So really nice attacking game there from Fabi. Of course, he simply outprepared his opponent. He was clearly very well prepared in this Sveshnikov line, and once he got that great attacking position after the bishops came off, I really like the way he conducted his attack from here, creating a threat on every move. Very instructive. All right, so day one of the Blitz Championship is in the books, and Fabi qualified. The way it works is it's on day two, it's a knockout stage. So 8 players qualified to day 2. Fabi was one of them, along with 7 other players. So it should be a very exciting conclusion tomorrow. I'll definitely be watching and creating more content around it. So if you guys want to see more tournament reports, Make sure to subscribe and like the video. And thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one.